Most guitar players bounce between tutorials and never actually learn a full song they can play confidently from start to finish. If you've never played a full song, this will walk you through Neil Young's Heart of Gold step by step with everything you need to succeed. And if you have played songs before, this is a chance to circle back, clean up your fundamentals, and rebuild your technique the right way. Over the last decade and a half, I've used one song to teach thousands of adults how to finally play real songs. And more importantly, how to learn songs on their own after that. In this video, you'll see the entire system I use with my private students. We'll break the song down into its core pieces, then lock it in with short guided workouts so it actually sticks. This video is long on purpose. You don't need to rush, you just need the right structure. Plus, you'll get to see me from a few years ago with long hair and my pinky still on my left hand. Grab your guitar, settle in, and let's get started. I'm Jake with Guitar Gym Pro. Welcome to Gateway to Guitar. Learn Heart of Gold and play any song. Congratulations on hopping into this course. This is going to be a huge step forward in your guitar playing. We're going to learn a ton of great fundamentals. We're going to learn to play Heart of Gold by Neil Young. We're going to use that song to learn all those fundamentals, to keep it fun, to keep it interesting. And we are going to make a lot of progress on guitar. First, we need to make sure we have a firm foundation of the basics. We're going to start with how to hold the guitar, how to hold the pick. We're going to talk about talking about the guitar, how to strum, how to count. All of these pointing us towards ultimately learning the chords we need for Heart of Gold, and finally going through each section and then the entire song so that we can play it confidently for other people on our own, with the record, or in a band setting. I know we're going over foundational material first, but don't rush, even if a lot of this stuff is a refresher for you. When we take time to dedicate to the fundamentals, we cut down the amount of time it ultimately takes to learn a song. I think it was attributed to Abe Lincoln. He said, if I have, 10 hours to cut down a tree, I'm gonna spend 6 or 8 or whatever it is sharpening my axe. And that's the point. Now, we need to focus on the right fundamentals, which we're gonna do in the proper order here together so that we can attack this song and play it with confidence. There are two main ways we can hold the guitar, with the strap or without the strap. I recommend using a strap because it lets the strap do a lot of the work that our arms would otherwise have to do to keep the guitar in place. Now, either way, we wanna position this arch here right about where our right leg is. This gives us access to the strings with our right hand and access to the neck with our left hand. Now, a lot of times you're gonna wanna kinda look over, see what you're doing, and that's perfectly fine. It also gives us a view towards what we're doing to make sure we have our fingers where we want them to be. Now, if I take the strap off of the guitar and I set that arch on my leg, you see I'm staying in roughly the same position. And that's the whole idea. The strap is just holding the guitar where it would be if we were sitting. I do have the crook of my right elbow or my right arm on the arch of the guitar. Now, if you have an electric guitar, you might be setting kind of your forearm on the arch because it'll be a lot smaller and a thinner body. That's perfectly fine as well. We do want our wrist and our hand to be straight, and we want to be moving from the elbow with a relaxed wrist as we strum, which we'll get into in more detail coming up. Also, as far as our left hand goes, there's a lot of ways that we're going to use our left hand to fret the guitar. Sometimes our thumb is a little higher, sometimes it's a little lower, but as a general principle, what we want to do is give a thumbs up, set that on about the top of the back of the neck, not at 50%, but about 75, 80%, and then curl our fingers around. The ideal way to play is to have the pad of our thumbs and the tips of our fingers touch the guitar. Now, as soon as I start to play, you'll see I'm playing a G chord here. That rule goes out the window. Now I'm touching in different places. Again, that's the ideal, but not what's always gonna happen. What we always wanna have happen is we want to remain relaxed. If our wrist is relatively straight, if we're relatively relaxed and we're not tense, our technique is gonna work. There's so many different ways to approach playing the instrument. So, to check if we're relaxed, we first wanna make sure, are our fingers relaxed or are we hyperextending some of our knuckles? We want to check, does our hand feel relaxed? Does our wrist feel relaxed? Do our shoulders feel relaxed? Our neck? Does our face feel relaxed, or are we all scrunched up? Lastly, check if your toes are curled, if you've got tension somewhere else in your body, even that's not interacting with the guitar. And if you find that you're relaxed everywhere and you're able to execute what you're trying to do, that is a great technique. The next thing we need to do is learn how to hold the pick. For playing Heart of Gold, we are going to use a pick because it's going to give us the most authentic sound for the song. So, how do we want to hold the pick? The first thing you're going to do is steal the pick away from your strumming hand just so we can, mess around with it. And you're going to give me a thumbs up. But what I want you to do is I want you to give me a loose thumbs up, right? We just relax those fingers out. Now we're going to take the pick with the point pointed directly to our left, and we're going to rest the thumb down on the pick. Now we're just going to bring that to the guitar, and you'll notice my wrist is straight. If I had my wrist cocked a little bit like this, I would just want to adjust the point of the tip just a little bit so that my wrist was nice and straight. Now, you might be thinking, if you've been used to holding your pick on the pads of your fingers, man, why am I doing it on the side? It feels a little awkward. So the main reason is that we don't have finger oils on the side of our fingers the way we do on the pads of our fingers. And so when we pinch the pick between 2 or 3 of our fingers, we're getting finger oil on the pick from both sides, and it's really easy to have that pick slip and fall around. If instead we put our pick on the side of our first finger, we're not going to have finger oils, and it's going to be a more stable base for the pick. And then we can hold it in place with our thumb. It's a lot easier in the long run to pick this way, even though it can be slightly awkward at first. There's other benefits, like making hybrid picking pretty easy. Hybrid picking is when we use our pick and our fingers together. So we might, pluck one note with our pick and then a few with our middle and ring finger. We're not going to be using that technique in this song, so that doesn't necessarily come into play, but it is a great reason to hold the pick this way. Now, as a disclaimer, if you've got a picking technique you've been using, a strumming technique you've been using, and it's working well for you, you're staying relaxed, like I referenced in the last video, you're able to execute the songs and the patterns and the solos you want to, I don't think that you should change just because I do it differently. If we look at Robin Ford or George Benson or John Mayer or Eric Johnson, all of these players are incredible and have a very distinctive right hand style. And they're all amazing. They're musical, they're expressive, it's phenomenal. I'm sharing with you what's worked for me and hundreds of my students who were just starting out to build a solid picking foundation. And if you don't have a solid picking foundation, please use mine. It will absolutely work. But if you've got another picking technique that you love, that you like, that is working for you, please don't start from zero. Keep going with what you're doing as long as it's working well for you. Our next step is to learn some guitar lingo, or talking about the guitar. So there's 3 main things that we're going to need to keep track of. We need to keep track of the strings. We've got 6 of them. The frets, which are the metal strips opposite the strings going up the neck of the guitar, and then our fingers on the left hand. So we're going to use numbers for the strings and for the frets. So let's start there. We're going to number the strings 1 through 6. 1 is the string that's the thinnest and closest to the ground. It's also the highest string. I say highest because it sounds higher. So when I say, oh, higher, and I point towards the ground, it's because I'm thinking in terms of pitch. It's a higher note, not a lower note. So 6 strings, 1 is the thinnest, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 is our thickest string. So if I said pluck string 1, or string 5, or string 3, or string 2, or string 6. We just want to make sure we're keeping track of which string is which. As we're learning chords and where to place our fingers, that's going to come into play. Next, we need to talk about numbering the frets. 0 or open means we're just playing a string all on its own. So if I were to play open first string, I would just play the first string open. If I were to play first fret on the first string, I would put my finger behind the first fret. Now, when I say behind, I mean towards the headstock. Now, when we play a fret, when we fret a note, we want to be as close to the fret as we can possibly be without actually touching it. When we touch the fret, we actually mute the note with our finger. We want to be just behind the fret, where the string and the fret are doing all of the work, our fingers just putting them into contact with each other, and we get a nice, clean, clear note. Now if I did, say, 2nd fret on the 3rd string, or if I did 3rd fret on the 5th string, or 3rd fret on the 6th string. Again, we're just going 1, 2, 3rd fret, and then I'm going as close to the fret as I can. You'll notice I am on the tip of my finger. The more we're on the tip of the finger, the easier it's going to be to connect the string to the fret. When we go with the pad of our finger, which is sometimes unavoidable, but we want to be on the tip. When we're on the tip of our finger, we're able to make the strings and the frets connect easier. On the pad of our finger, the string will actually kind of dig into our finger a little bit, causing us to have to use more effort. The goal is to use the least amount of effort possible. So we want to be on the tips of our fingers and as close to those frets as we can be. Lastly, we need to deal with the 4 fingers on our left hand that are going to be fretting notes. Instead of using numbers for these, I'm going to call them index, middle, ring, and finally pinky. So if I were to say use index finger to play 1st fret on the 1st string, I would take my index finger, I would go to 1st fret on the 1st string, again closest to the ground, and I would play that note. If I were going to use my ring finger to play 3rd fret on the 5th string, I would take my ring finger, I would go to the 3rd fret of the 5th string. If I were using my middle finger to play 2nd fret of the 4th string, I would take my middle finger, I would go to 2nd fret on the 4th string, and I would pluck that note. All right, I'm going to give you just a few more to practice. Let's use our ring finger to play 3rd fret on the 1st string. Let's use our index finger to play 1st fret on the 5th string. Let's use our pinky to play 3rd fret on the 1st string. Pinky, 3rd fret, 1st string. Let's use our middle finger to play 3rd fret on the 6th string. So middle finger, 3rd fret, 6th string. Let's use what we've already learned to learn our first chord. So I want to start with index finger. We're going to go on 2nd fret of the 5th string. So I'm taking my index finger, 2nd fret of the 5th string, plucking it to make sure it's a clear note. Now I'm going to leave that down. We're going to add another finger to it so we can play a chord where we strum all 6 strings and it rings out nice and pretty. We're going to take our middle finger and we're going to put it on 2nd fret. So it's the same fret that our index finger is already on the 4th string. So when I go to do that, you'll see that my middle finger is kind of going in front of my index finger. So I actually have to slide back just a little bit, back meaning towards the headstock, so I can fit both fingers. Now my index finger isn't in an ideal position. It's not as close to the fret as possible. We just get it as close to the fret as we can. That's it. These 2 notes, index finger, 2nd fret of the 5th string, middle finger, 2nd fret of the 4th string, are our E minor chord, and it's the most common chord in Heart of Gold, which is why we're learning it first. Give the 6 strings a strum. Let's see how it sounds. Awesome. Now, if you're struggling to get this to make sound, what I would suggest is playing each string individually to see where we might be getting a dead note or a note that doesn't sound right. For example, if we're plucking through them. As I get to this 3rd string, I notice that my middle finger is touching the side of that string so it's not leaning clearly. I just need to bring my wrist under the guitar a little bit more, arch my fingers just a little bit more to get it to ring out cleanly. Now what we want to do to memorize this E minor chord is an exercise I call grab and release. So what I mean by that is we're going to grab our E minor chord, we're going to strum it to make sure it sounds good. Now, just a reminder, that's going to be index finger, 2nd fret of the 5th string, middle finger, 2nd fret of the 4th string. Now I'm gonna release, drop my hand, and I'm actually setting it on my thigh because I don't want to just lift them up and have them be really close to the strings in the guitar so I can just set them back down. I really want to kind of erase my mental etch-a-sketch of the chord, so I have to find it again as I bring my hand back to the guitar. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to lift my hand up, my thumb's on the back of the guitar, I'm rounding my fingers over, index finger on 2nd fret of the 5th string, middle finger on 2nd fret of the 4th string. It's our E minor. I'm going to strum it again to make sure it sounds right. And then I'm gonna release again. Now I would do about 10 of these. I really wanna solidify the way this chord sounds in my mind and also the way it feels under my fingers. And again, don't hesitate to look at the guitar, make sure your fingers are in the right spot. That's absolutely okay. But we do wanna be doing this grab and release. Again, 10 times for a new chord is about good. It's gonna make all the difference in us memorizing the chord quickly. A big part of learning guitar is making sure that we've got a great mental picture of what we're trying to do in our mind. That I can see, okay, I want that index finger on the 2nd fret of the 5th string. When we start playing guitar, you know, the guitar in our mind has like 16 strings and some of them are shorter and it looks like one of those Escher drawings where the hands are drawing each other and it's really hard to zero in on what we want our fingers to do. If we can have a clear picture in our mind of where our hands are going, that is going to make it so much easier to get our fingers to do what we want them to do. More on that in just a little bit. Make sure you're doing the 10 of these grab and releases on this E minor chord. Now that we know our first chord, I want to dive in and talk a little bit about how we learn guitar, how we get our brain and our hands to connect to each other so we can actually play the instrument. This is so important because when we get stuck, not if, when, every single one of us is going to hit a roadblock or a plateau in our playing. Understanding this framework of how we learn music, and the guitar in particular, is going to help us know how to break through that wall that we're facing and continue to make the progress we really want to. So learning guitar is really broken up into 3 key areas. I call them our mind's ear, technique, and theory. And I want to break them down because they're probably not the same definitions you've heard before. The very first thing is our mind's ear. And what I mean by that is just like your mind's eye, if I say, hey, think about your childhood bedroom. You can remember where the bed is and if there was a window and what you had on a bookshelf. You've got a mental picture. We want to use our mind's ear the exact same way. If I say, think about the intro for Heart of Gold, we want to be able to think about it and pull up in our mind what it sounds like. We can listen to it almost as if we're hitting play on Spotify. And if I were to say something like, now imagine that it's not a guitar, but it's a piano playing that intro, you can change the sound of the music in your mind to be a piano. Now, that is somewhat advanced, but I'm using this to illustrate. That's the concept. That's what our mind's ear is. That's the first and most important part of learning guitar. I'll break that down just a little bit more in a second. Our second step is technique. That is physically playing the instrument. That is knowing what we're trying to do. We could have just as easily called this the mind's eye. The idea is that we can imagine in our mind and see clearly what we want to do with our fingers, our left hand, our right hand, where we're doing it. You know, are we doing a down and then a down up, or how does all that work? That's all technique. Knowing the mechanics that we're going for and then being able to execute those mechanics. Now, that's after mind's ear in this, because if we can accurately hear it in our mind's ear, it's going to make the technique part of things 1,000 times easier. I can't overstate this enough. If you can hear something in your mind clearly enough, you will be able to play it. So that's where we want to start. Then we want to move on to understanding what we're physically doing. The last step is theory. Now, music theory has this reputation for being this like magical art. Like, I'm gonna get this book on music theory and I'm gonna study it and it's gonna be this like skeleton key that unlocks how to play music. But the reality is it's a lot more simple than that. Music theory is just having a name for things that we know what they sound like and we know how to play them. So if you know a chord, for example, this one we just learned, and you know that it's called E minor, That's music theory. We've just come up with a name for this chord. Instead of me having to tell you in every future lesson, okay, we're gonna put our index finger on 2nd fret of the 5th string, I just say E minor. And that's what music theory is. It's a shorthand for us to communicate. And so we wanna make sure that our theory knowledge doesn't outpace our ear or our technique. We're just using music theory to name things that we can hear and that we can play. Going back just a little bit more to talk about the mind's ear. A few exercises that you can do, even starting out this early, is to go ahead and fret this E minor chord like you're gonna strum it, but don't strum it. Close your eyes, feel what it would be like to strum it, and hear it in your mind. Now, it may not be very clear at the beginning, and that's okay. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna practice it, then we're gonna actually strum it. And now imagine strumming it again. It seems a little bit goofy, but this is so crucial to learning to play any instrument. Music is an aural or an ear, A-U-R-A-L, art. It's all about what we can hear. And I know there's so much talk about somebody being a naturally gifted musician, but the truth is the people who pick up an instrument really easy are typically what I would call an auditory learner. They listen to a podcast or an audiobook and they can tell you exactly what happened, but make them read that same book or watch a movie about it and they wouldn't be able to tell you what was in it because they learn best by hearing. And so what we want to do is emulate that. We want to work on using our ear to learn. Now, if you run into issues playing, we want to run down this list: mind's ear, technique, theory. We want to figure out where are we having an issue. When we run into a plateau, a song that's difficult for us, an exercise that's keeping us stuck, what we want to do is we want to run through this list, our mind's ear, technique, and theory, and see where the weak part is so we can fix the weak part. So the first thing we want to do is think, can I hear in my mind's ear what I'm trying to do? Maybe we're trying to learn a solo that's just too fast. Our mind can't hear things that quickly quite yet. Well, now we know what we need to work on. Maybe we haven't listened to the song enough, so we're trying to remember how to play something that we really don't know what it sounds like. Well, we know how to fix that as well. Maybe we know exactly what it sounds like, but we're struggling to make it happen. I don't know how to make this chord, or I don't know how to get from this chord to that chord. Okay, now we just need to break it down, slow down the part that's difficult from a technique perspective, and repeat it until we can make it happen with our hands. Our last step would be theory. Do I maybe not have a name for this? I keep forgetting it because I don't have it labeled in my mind. There's not a file bin that I can go pull that out of, just like we talked about with our E minor chord. That's usually not the culprit. Most of the time, it's gonna be we can't hear it accurately, or we don't know what to do with our fingers. One last quick thought on technique. A lot of people think in playing guitar, we're trying to build strength or endurance or dexterity in our left hand in particular, but a lot of times in both. The truth of the matter is, what we're trying to do is connect our brain to our hand. You see, your brain sees your hand as a grasping mechanism. That's what it's for. Our thumb and our fingers, and our brain sees our middle finger primarily, are looking to grab things, a steering wheel, a cup, turning the faucet, which is great. It's what we need our hands for. But when we're playing guitar, we want each finger to move individually when we want it to. And so if we know what it's supposed to sound like, and we know where we want our fingers to go, but they're not cooperating, a lot of times that's because we've got a little dirt, one-lane road filled with potholes from our brain to our hand, because all we ever have to do is grasp. And what we need to do is we need to build that into an 8-lane superhighway, so that when we're holding our fingers down and we want to lift up our pinky, our middle finger doesn't move. Or when we want to move to a new chord that we're learning that we've never played before, we can get our fingers to cooperate and go where we want them to. But that's not about strength or endurance or dexterity. It's all about connecting our brain to our hands. And that's why these questions are so important. Can I hear it in my mind's ear? Can I do it with my fingers? And then do I understand what I'm calling this idea from here on out? These are the questions we want to use every time we're practicing. Strumming is foundational to guitar playing. Instead of going on and learning a bunch of chords, I want to tackle strumming while we know one chord, the first chord for this song, because this is what's going to separate you from being a player that can only really play in your bedroom or for yourself, to being somebody who can bust out the guitar and run the sing-along around the campfire, to jam with friends that you just met, to go to an open mic and play confidently. It's all about strumming and timing. The truth is, the most important part of music is timing, is groove, is staying in the pocket, as musicians would say. Now, that comes as a surprise to so many people because there's so much to do with our left hand, so much to do with our right hand, so many notes to play, especially on guitar, that a lot of times we think that's where the focus needs to be. But the truth is, timing and strumming are foundational to guitar playing. Now, one thing I tell my students all the time is that the only thing that is right or wrong in music is being in time. Once we establish a tempo and we're playing it, we're only wrong if we get so far off we're on a different beat than other musicians. That's because we're just playing every single note differently than everybody else. It's not something that's sustainable. This is what's going to take songs from being unrecognizable when you play through them to everybody going, ah, that's Heart of Gold. I love that song. So we're starting with this, again, because it is so foundational. When we play a wrong note or a wrong chord, most of the people listening to us play aren't guitar players, aren't musicians, and they're just going to think, ah, that was a weird choice. I don't know that I like that. They're not going to think you made a mistake. But if we get off on our strumming and we're in a different spot than the rest of the band and we have to stop a song, everyone will know something went wrong. That's why this is such an important factor in learning guitar and why we're jumping it in front of learning all the chords we need for Heart of Gold. Every minute you spend working on strumming will pay dividends. Guitar, like anything in life, requires that we have a firm foundation in the fundamentals. And strumming is the fundamental to playing good guitar. Go slowly, don't move on until you understand these concepts. And if you need to reach out to us, if you have some questions, please do. We're here to help. We're here to support you through this. We want to see you making the guitar progress we know you can be making. One last thought on strumming before we dive in. In the beginning, this can be difficult for a lot of people, especially those who have not grown up being auditory learners. And that's okay. Stick with this. Once you have the breakthrough, once you can play with the metronome, once you understand how the strumming patterns work, you're done with working on this. It's something where we practice it now, we build the foundation, we get good at it, and we don't have to worry about it in the future. This isn't something that has to be a part of your practice routine for the next 3 years. It's something that needs to be a part of your practice routine right now until you get it, and you will. Our next step is to learn to count in 4. Most music, I'd say about 80 to 90% of songs, are broken up into groups of 4, meaning we count to 4, and then we count to 4 again, and we count to 4 again, and we do that over and over from the beginning of the song until the end. So with me, I want you to count to 4 over and over again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I hope you notice as I'm counting, everything is even. I'm not counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one is steady and is even. And we'll dive more into that next. Now we are going to use a metronome. A metronome is just a tool, a little ticking box, if you will, but you can find an app on your phone. There's a lot of great free ones out there that's gonna mechanically or, nowadays digitally, click evenly. So it'll tell us exactly what a steady tempo is. Now, humans, us, we're not great at doing that. A lot of times you'll hop in the car, you know where you're going, you'll start driving and you'll just kind of have the realization that you're waking up, getting to where you are. You know that 15 minutes went by like that. Sometimes we're in line at the DMV and we're sure it's been an hour and we look up and it's been about 8 minutes. right? So time is something for us that we're not great at sensing. We need to practice doing that. And that's what the metronome helps us to do. It's just going to click evenly at a certain tempo. And we measure that tempo in what we call beats per minute, or BPM for short. Now we're going to want to start almost everything at 60 BPM. I still do that to this day when I'm learning things. 60 BPM is about the best sweet spot we can find. It's not too fast, it's not too slow. It really gives us an opportunity to dive in and pay attention to what we're doing, using our mind's ear, understanding the technique like we talked about, instead of just playing things where they're just too fast. But if you find it's a little quick, it's always good to slow down. For right now, we're gonna start counting in 4 with a metronome. I'm gonna start the metronome, I'm gonna let it click 4 times, and then I'm gonna start counting with it to 4. All right, get ready. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, let's start to use our chords with this. Now we're gonna wanna strum while we use the metronome. As we're counting to 4, each time we count, we're gonna take our pick and we're gonna strum down. We're gonna use this E minor chord we learned just a little bit ago. Now, we're gonna go down every time we count a number, and in between, just retake your hand up to the top of the strings so you can do it. Pay attention to the metronome more than anything else so you can tell, am I ahead of it, am I behind it, or am I lining up right with it? Again, we're doing this at 60 beats per minute. Here we go. We'll listen to it for 4 clicks, then we'll come in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I hope you noticed I was counting out loud the entire time I did that. I want you to do that as well. As much as we can be putting our focus on timing right now, the better. Also, just so we know as we're practicing these are called quarter notes. Quarter notes because we have 4 of them. Now, let's dive in and learn eighth notes. Playing only quarter notes or only down strums is going to be pretty boring. We can't make too many exciting patterns with that. So what we want to do is we want to come up with a way that we can make our strumming patterns more active. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take those 4 quarter notes and we're going to double them and we're going to play eighth notes. But we're counting to 4 and we're already counting all of our 4 possible beats. So instead of numbers, what we're going to say is and in between each number. I'm going to play the metronome, I'm going to let it click 4 times, and I'm going to count through it so you can hear what it sounds like counting before we play. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, when we're strumming, we're going to give ourselves a rule. We're going to go down on the numbers and up on the ands. Now, for this entire lesson, this whole series, that is going to be our rule. Now, it's a great rule to follow. In general, it'll help you strum almost any song if you stick with that rule. So, knowing we're going to try to go down on numbers and up on ands, it's going to sound something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We're going to do it together with the metronome. I want to make sure that we're keeping the ands even. We're not playing 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, or 1 and 2 and 3. We're keeping them dead even. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, let's try it. We'll listen to 4 clicks and come in again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and if you're struggling with this, if you're having trouble playing with the metronome or feeling like you're connecting with it, make sure that you're stopping these videos, pulling out a metronome app on your phone, a metronome you have, just Googling it, and you can come up with one that'll be in a web browser. And we can do so many things. The first is just let it play and count. Make sure we can line up with it while it's clicking. Then make sure that we can do those eighth notes in between those notes. You can try strumming only on beat 1, which would be like this. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or only strumming on beat 2 and 4, which would be like this. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The goal here is we know what it's going to sound like because we're setting a rule for ourselves. We know that we're only strumming on 2, we're only strumming on 4. We're using our technique to set that ideal. We're going to strum on 2 and 4 instead of all of them. Now again, these are just for practice. If you're playing the eighth notes and you feel super confident, that's great, you can move on. But a lot of people struggle to really lock in with the metronome because it's unnatural for us, and that's okay. We're here to get through that together. If you feel like you've tried those things and this is a spot that you're getting stuck, again, please reach out. We are here to help you break through this plateau. I know that you can do it, and I know you're gonna do it. If you're struggling to play eighth notes evenly, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, but are instead having a tendency to play them either short, long, 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, or long, short, 1 and 2 and. We can use the metronome to help us line those up a little bit better. So if we're playing at 60 beats per minute, which is a great starting tempo, and we just double that to 120. Now each click is a quarter note, then the eighth note. It's clicking on 1 and also the and after 1. That can really help us feel those evenly. I'm going to demonstrate that. We're going to let the metronome play for 8 full clicks, because again, now it's clicking on the numbers and the ands. Then we're going to count. We're not going to strum yet. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then we're going to strum. Now the reason that we're listening and then counting so much is we really want to internalize this pulse of the metronome. We really want to be able to focus our attention onto the metronome before we play with it. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Doubling the metronome speed, going from 60 to 120, so we can hear clicks on all 8 spots, the quarter notes and the eighth notes, where we're strumming, is super useful even for slowing things down. Let me explain how that works. When I'm at 60 beats per minute, if I try to slow down to 50, the clicks are so far away from each other in time that we're not checking in with the metronome often enough to really get the feel for the pulse. It's really hard at 50 beats per minute or 40 beats per minute to feel the pulse any longer. But when we're at 120, we can slow it down to 110 or even 100. And 100 BPM would be the same as 50, right? So I'm going to demonstrate that right now. I've got my metronome set to 100 BPM. We're going to play it, listen to it for 8 clicks. Then we're going to count 1 full measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then we're going to strum on our E minor chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's take our knowledge of the metronome and counting and build some strumming patterns. We're going to do 3 right now. You'll see 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and written out. I'm going to use a D under the numbers to indicate we want to do a down strum. I'm going to use a U under an and or a plus sign to indicate we want to do an up strum. If you see that it's blank, it means that we want to miss the strings. We're not even going to connect with them. But we still want to do what I would call a ghost strum, where we're missing the strings as we strum. That's going to keep our hand moving, just like a metronome or a clock, ticking, so that we stay steady and in time. So our first strum pattern is going to be down on beat 1. We're going to go down up on 2 and, down on beat 3, and then down up on 4 and. You'll see the and after 1 and the and after 3, we're not strumming, we're just going to miss the strings up. Still using that E minor chord, it would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, take a second, practice that, pause the video, make sure that you can count that comfortably, that you can understand how to do it even out of time if you need to. And then hit play again, we'll come back and we'll do it together with the metronome. I've got the metronome set to 60 beats per minute. We're going to listen to it click 4 times our quarter notes. Then we're going to count 4 times. We're going to count the ands as well. And then we're going to start strumming this pattern. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. A great way to practice this would be to put the metronome on at 60 beats per minute, if that's comfortable for you. If you're struggling to play this at 60 beats per minute with me, you can double the metronome, remember. Go from 60 to 120, and now the clicks are clicking on each quarter and each eighth note. Then we can slow that down to 110, 100, even back to 80 beats per minute, where each click is 1 and 2 and, right? I would recommend to practice this. You grab the metronome, you let it play, you set an egg timer for about 2 minutes, and then you start the egg timer and you count in and you play this strumming pattern for 2 full minutes. If you can't play it at about 85% of the time correctly, or if it's just such a train wreck that you can't keep going, slow it down and keep playing it and keep slowly speeding it up until you can play it comfortably. That's the key here, is really internalizing this feel, counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and strumming confidently with the metronome. Let's try our second strum pattern. Again, we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we're going to strum down on 1, up on the and then down on 2. We're going to miss the and after 2. We're going to strum down, up on 3 and then we're going to strum down on 4, missing the and after 4. Watch that and after 4. I'll demonstrate. It sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm going to play the metronome at 60 again. We're going to listen for 4, count for 4 with the eighth notes, and then start to strum. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Again, if you're struggling, make sure, pause the video and play the strum pattern out of time, making sure we can line up our counting with our pick, even if it's slow, even if it's awkward. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We've got to be able to do the counting and the strumming before we can bring it together with the metronome. Then make sure that we've set the metronome at a speed that we can handle, whether that's 60 beats per minute, whether we need to double that to 120 so that we can make our eighth notes even, or even slow it down from there back to 110, 100, 90. That's all okay. We just want to do this until we can get it comfortably. All right, we've got a third and final strum pattern we're going to work on. We're going to play down on 1. We're going to do the go strum after that. Down on 2, go strum after that. Then 3 and will be down up and 4 and will be down up. It sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Again, practice that without me, without the metronome. Hit pause. And then come back when you're ready. Got the metronome set to 60. We'll listen for 4 clicks. We're going to count eighth notes for 4 clicks. And we're going to come in strumming. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I want to talk about a fun and goofy analogy I give a lot of my students to help them get better at playing with the metronome, and it's called the magical beach ball of musical time. Now this is the magical beach ball of musical time, and it is always rolling forward. And this is you on top of the magical beach ball of musical time, and you are jumping up and down on it. Now every time the metronome clicks is when you land on the beach ball and you jump again. Now you see you're in the middle of the beach ball, but you could be jumping more towards the back of the beach ball. And that would actually make it feel like we're slowing the beach ball down, even though we're not, because it's always going at the same speed. Or we could be jumping on the front of the beach ball, which would make it feel like we're speeding it up. Again, even though it's staying at the same speed. But we have to be careful. If we jump too far behind the beach ball, we'll fall off the back and it'll roll away, leaving us behind. And if we jump too far in front of the beach ball, well, we'll jump off the front and it'll roll over us and crush us. So we want to be in the sweet spot in the middle, or just a little bit behind, or just a little bit ahead, and that's what gives music its feel and its groove, or its pocket. Now, I know this is kind of a goofy analogy, but I find that if we're struggling with the metronome, giving ourselves this mental picture of bouncing up and down on each click can really help us lock in with it and feel what it's like. Also, seeing each one of those clicks as a giant beach ball that we're jumping on instead of just one tiny little point we're trying to hit can make all the difference in us staying right with it or getting left behind or run over. Let's learn a fun eighth note game we can play that can really help our strumming hand and us lock in with the metronome. Now, the way that this works is we've got 8 possible places that we can strum in a measure. We've got beats 1, 2, 3, and 4, and all the eighth notes after each of those. So we've got 4 down strums on the numbers, 4 up strums on the ands. So what we would do in the eighth note game, we would pick one spot in that measure that we can strum. So I might say I'm gonna do it on beat 2. So I'm going to do ghost strums the rest of the time, and only on beat 2 am I going to bring my pick to the strings, and am I going to play it. It would be like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now let's make it a little more difficult. Let's say I'm going to only play on the and after beat 3. It would be like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now I can actually do 2 strikes or 3 strikes or even 4, picking where they're going to go in the measure. The most important part is that I'm sure about what I want to be doing, so I can know whether I am doing it or not. So let's try beat 1, the and after 2, the and after 3, and 4. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And again, this would be a great exercise to do for 2 minutes, 90 seconds, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, somewhere in there. I find 2 minutes to be a really good sweet spot. And we're just deciding what we're going to play and then playing it. So if you have difficulty strumming on, let's say, the and of 3 or remembering to play on the and after 4, we could target that as a place that we want to be strumming in this game. I find it to be a much more fun way to practice these than just playing the same strumming pattern over and over again. You may have noticed so far, all of the misses that we've done in our strumming patterns have only been on up strums. We haven't missed any of the down strums. When we miss a down strum, it's called syncopation. And what we're doing is we're subverting the idea that we would be strumming on all the beats where the clicking is happening, where the kick and the snare drum are playing. Syncopation's a little bit more difficult, but with the foundation we've laid, it shouldn't be super difficult from here. So the first thing we're going to learn is the most common strum pattern in any song, and that's where we play all of the eighth notes except the down strum on beat 3. It would sound like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Again, pause it. Practice this strum pattern slowly. If it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, make sure we get the mechanics, that we know what we want it to sound like. And then come back and we'll do it together. We've got the metronome at 60 beats per minute. We're gonna listen once, we're gonna count once, and then we're gonna come in with that strum pattern. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 again, we want to practice these until we can play them with the metronome comfortably for about 2 minutes, shooting for 85% accuracy. All right, now let's take a look at our next syncopated pattern. We're going to strum on beat 1, we're going to strum on beat 2, we're going to strum on the and after 2. And that's it. Now this is part of the lick, the riff, the signature sound in this Neil Young song. We're going to get to how to play it in context, but right now we want to practice the right hand part of it. And what it would sound like is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, pause it. Let's get that under our fingers, then come back. Metronome is set at 60 beats per minute. We're going to listen once, count once, and then play this a handful of times. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We've got one more syncopated strumming pattern to cover together. Now, we're going to strum on 1 and down up. We're going to strum on the and after 2, which would be an up, and then we're going to strum on beat 4, which is a down. If you've been doing the 8th note game I taught earlier, you'll see how useful it can be. So just to show you this one, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Again, practice that. Let's get it under our fingers. Let's make sure it's feeling confident and comfortable. And then come back and we'll do it together with the metronome. At 60 beats per minute, we're going to listen once, count once, and then strum it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, if you're still having difficulty with any of these strumming patterns with playing with the metronome, don't feel bad about slowing down, about going back and about reaching out if you still have questions. We're here to walk you through this. The way that you're gonna get there is setting the metronome to a tempo you can play, setting the egg timer to 2 minutes, and focusing on one strum pattern. Spend 2 minutes playing it slowly, speed it up about 8 beats per minute, play it again for 2 minutes. Speed it up again 8 beats per minute, play it again for 2 minutes. We really wanna do a ton of repetition here. And remember, this isn't a forever amount of repetition. This is for the next little while in your practice routine until this feels comfortable. Now, I've introduced 3 regular strumming patterns and 3 syncopated strumming patterns. That's 6 total. You don't need to practice all 6 every single day. It's okay to say, hey, I'm gonna focus on this one in 3 2-minute chunks today, and I'll play 2 minutes of this other one over here. And then tomorrow, because this went well, I'm gonna pull in a new one. Or man, I was still struggling there, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna work on this some more. We just wanna make sure that we get this to a place where, man, I feel comfortable and confident doing this with the metronome. It's gonna pay dividends when we go to play the song. This is what makes you sound like a guitar player. Now that we've gone over strumming, I want to talk about the 4 chords we need to play Heart of Gold. We need to learn to read a chord box so that we can remember these chords every time we come back to them and use them to learn new chords in the future. So, how do we read a chord box? Essentially, a chord box is going to be a picture of a guitar neck that's up and down instead of side to side. We'll have our thick strings on the left, we'll have our thin strings on the right. Now, you'll see lines going up and down, those represent the strings, and we have lines going side to side, those represent the frets. And you'll see dots that represent where your fingers go, which strings and which frets. A lot of times you'll see a little number filling in the dot, and that just tells you which finger to use, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So the one we're looking at is E minor. You'll see we have a 1 that's on 2nd fret of the 5th string. Again, the 5th string is 2nd from the left, 2nd thickest. And we have a 2 in the dot on 2nd fret of the 4th string. And that's our E minor chord. You'll see the O's above each of the other strings as indications that you want them to ring open. If they had an X instead of an O there, you would not want to play that particular string. But with the E minor chord, we do play all 6 strings. The next chord we need is a C chord. You'll see that our 1st string is open, 2nd string has our 1st finger or index finger on the 1st fret, 3rd string is open, 4th string has our middle finger or 2nd finger on 2nd fret, the 5th string has our ring finger on 3rd fret, and you'll see the 6th string has an X over it. We only want to play the 5 strings closest to the ground. Give that a strum. Remember, if we're a little bit getting kind of a muted thumpy sound, we can play each string individually to see where we're getting those mutes, and then adjust our left hand by kind of rolling under it until it sounds nice and open. Remember our grab and release exercise. We'll want to do another 10 for this C chord. We really want to get it into our memory. Now, it may take a few days till you can just grab it without having to think too hard about it or look back at that chord diagram, but that's where we want to get, and that's what this grab and release exercise is going to do for us. So I recommend you pause the video to do that now. Our next chord is going to be a D chord. You'll see we have 2nd finger or middle finger on 2nd fret of the 1st string. We have our 3rd finger or ring finger on 3rd fret of the 2nd string. We have our index finger on 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and it's indicated that we play the 4th string open. We have X's over the 5th and 6th string. So this is only a 4-string chord, the 4 closest to the ground. And that's D. We want to go ahead and strum it, make sure it sounds nice and clear, and again, we're going to do that grab and release exercise. We want to do that at least 10 times per chord, making sure that we really feel comfortable making it. Now I know I've been playing for a long time, so my hand looks comfortable. It looks like I maybe done this a bunch, because I have. It's okay if it's taking you a while to build the chord and you're having to like really think about where your fingers go and then realize that it's not on the right string and then strum. It's going to take a little bit of time to get this, but you will absolutely get this. All right, let's look at our last chord. It's a G chord. We're starting with our pinky on 3rd fret of the 1st string, or 4th finger. We're starting with our 3rd finger, or ring finger, on 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Our 2 middle strings are open. We have our index, or 1st finger, on 2nd fret of the 5th string, and we have our middle finger on 3rd fret of the thickest string. So we're using all 4 fingers to play this chord. We want to give it a strum and make it sound nice, and then again, we're doing this grab and release. A lot of times it might be easier if we pick a finger to start with and kind of fill in everything else, instead of just trying to slap them down all together, especially at the beginning. I usually find it's easier to go from the outside, so either starting with your middle finger, but actually I find pinky easiest to start with because it's our most difficult finger, so we might as well get it in the right place while we can, and then move on to the other fingers. Now that we know the chords we need for the song, we need to work on changing between them. So we want to be able to play one chord and then flow into the next chord of the song. Now, we're going to use 2 ways to do this. The first is going to be anchor fingers, and the second is going to be target fingers. Let's talk about anchor fingers first. Now, an anchor finger is when we have a particular finger that we set down for one chord that we leave anchored in place as we change to the next chord. It helps us find reference for where all our other fingers are going to go because we don't have to lift it up every time we play the chords. Now you'll see I'm sliding just a little bit as I go back and forth between these 2 chords, but it's still staying put. I don't have to lift it up and find the chord from nothing. So the first example of this is going to be G to E minor. So grab the G chord with me. We've got pinky on 3rd fret of the 1st string, ring finger on 3rd fret of the 2nd, index finger on 2nd fret of the 5th, and middle finger on 3rd fret of the 6th. And that's our G chord. Now our anchor finger is going to be our index finger because we're going to E minor. And you'll remember our index finger is on 2nd fret of the 5th string, and then our middle finger is on 2nd fret of the 4th string for E minor. So that index finger is our anchor as we're changing between these 2 chords. Now the first step in learning to change between these 2 chords is 1, our grab and release exercise, making sure we can play the chords themselves. But our next big step is out of time, no metronome, no nothing. We're playing these particular chords back and forth, making sure we know exactly where our fingers are supposed to go. So often when students come to me, I see them rushing through chord changes, letting fingers fly all over the place because they don't know exactly where they're trying to get. They're kind of erasing the mental etch-a-sketch and then trying to find the next chord. But what we want to do is see how each chord relates to each other chord. That's helping us build our mental image. Now, we want to bring the metronome into this practice so we can judge how quickly we're getting from one chord to the next. I'm going to set the metronome to 60 beats per minute like I usually do. And on 1, we're going to strum the G. The next time we get to 1, we're going to strum the E minor. Now, when we're doing an exercise like this, where we're working on changing chords, we do not need to hold the chord as long as possible. When we're playing songs and when we're playing strum patterns, we want to hold the chord as long as we can, but because we're just practicing changing, use all that time in between the beat 1s to move your fingers and get set up for the next chord. The way that you push yourself is you raise the tempo of the metronome. So let's try this at 60. We'll listen 1, count 1, and then we'll strum. 1, 2, 3, 4. G, 2, 3, 4. E minor, 2, 3, 4. G, 2, 3, 4. E minor, 2, 3, 4. G, 2, 3, 4. E minor, 2, 3, 4. G, 2, 3, 4, E minor, 2, 3, 4. We've got 2 more examples to work through with anchor fingers, but before we move on, remember, practice this in 2-minute chunks at 60 beats per minute, and then go up in groups of 8 beats per minute, 68, 76, 84, 92. We don't want to go too quickly. We want to make sure that we're really building strong habits. I'm sure you've all heard slow is smooth and smooth is fast. We need to slow down so that we can do these things smoothly and confidently. And as soon as we can do them confidently, our speed will increase so quickly. All right, let's take a look at our second anchor finger chord change. Our next example is moving from D to G. So remember our D chord, we've got our middle finger, 2nd fret, 1st string, ring finger, 3rd fret, 2nd string, index finger, 2nd fret, 3rd string, and then open 4th string. Now our ring finger is in this exact same spot when we play a G chord. And so we want to use this guy, our ring finger, as this anchor finger to help us find the location of the other notes that we're trying to play when we switch from D to G. So again, our first step is to do this slowly out of time, leaving that ring finger down in place. And leaving your finger in place might be the hardest part in the beginning because our finger wants to fly up, and that's okay, it may take some time, but knowing we want that finger to anchor is the first step. We're gonna do this again with the metronome. We're gonna listen to it click for 4, we're gonna count for 4, and then we're gonna play this change a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our last chord change that uses the anchor finger is when we go from E minor to C. You'll see my middle finger can stay down this whole time because it's on 2nd fret of the 4th string for both of these chords. And remember, what we want to do is we want to practice this nice and slowly, making sure that we can do this change without lifting up that middle finger, knowing it might take us a little while, and again, using the metronome as a tool to practice this. So make sure we're doing this 2-minute chunks back and forth. Now, I've said this before, when we're constructing a practice routine, we don't necessarily need to do every possible chord combination. What we want to do is we want to focus on our weaknesses. If you're just starting, I'd say do E minor to G. It's a pretty comfortable one. If you feel pretty good with E minor to G, but you're struggling with D to G, focus on that one. Same with C to E minor. We just want to focus on where our weakest spot is that day and that week. And if we just keep identifying where our weak spots are and we keep working there, we're going to make a ton of progress. Sometimes the chords we're going back and forth between don't have a finger in common, so we can't use an anchor finger. In this case, we would use a target finger, meaning we're going to pick one of the fingers for the chord we're going to focus on getting in place first and filling in the rest of the chord after. An example of this is going from E minor to D. They don't have any fingers in common, so what do? For me, I get set up on this E minor chord, and then I target 1st finger, 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and then I fill in my other 2 fingers on the D chord. When I'm going back to the E minor, I target my index finger, 1st finger, on 2nd fret of the 5th string. So I'm using my index finger as my target finger. I'm targeting that and filling in the rest of the chord. Once we've got one finger in place, it's a lot easier to feel where the other fingers need to go. Now again, this is a great exercise to slow down and do on its own. And as soon as you can with the metronome, nice and slowly, changing just on beat 1 and speeding up that metronome as you get better and better at doing it. So we've got one more example of a target finger we need. So we did E minor to D. Now we need to do C to D. When I start on my C chord, I'm still targeting my index finger for D. Now for me, I like to target my ring finger for C. I'm trying to get my 3rd fret on the 5th string with my ring finger and then filling in the rest of my chord. Again, I'm targeting my index finger for the D, ring finger for the C. Index finger for the D, ring finger for the C. And again, we want to slow that down and practice it till it's comfortable and then bring it to the metronome until we can play it quickly and comfortably. And remember, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. If you're like almost all of my beginning guitar students, when you're trying to change between these chords, you're having fingers fly all over the place. You're trying to get your middle finger to lift up, but instead your ring finger does. Or you want your index finger to move, but your middle finger lifts up. Now, that's completely understandable. The way that our brain and our hands communicate, I've already told you, we're trying to grab things. We're not trying to use each individual finger. To make it even a little bit more difficult, you have 3 tendons controlling 4 fingers, and actually your middle finger and ring finger share a tendon. It splits off in your wrist, and they're all connected back here to the muscle. So your pinky's the weakest, but your ring finger has the least communication with your brain, and then your brain is mostly seeing your middle finger. So again, this is a hurdle that we all face. There is one exercise that I recommend to everyone, and I still do this exercise to this day because it helps us build this brain-finger connection. And it's just a simple spider exercise, but the way I do it is very particular. So I'm going to start on the 5th fret, and I'm going to have my index on the 5th, my middle on the 6th, my ring finger on the 7th, and my pinky on the 8th fret. And it's all on the 1st string right now, and I've got them all down. Now, your fingers might be turned a little bit this way, or they might be this way, but what we don't want is we don't want them kind of all collapsed together. We want to really work to have each one rounded. We want bent at each knuckle. It's really easy to kind of hyperextend this pinky, but we don't want to do that, and we want to be on the tips of the fingers. You'll see I have a lot of space here, right? Like I've got my thumb, and then just the tips of my fingers touching. Again, this is kind of our ideal scenario we talked about at the very beginning. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move one finger at a time. I'm not even playing with my right hand. This is just a left hand exercise. So I'm going to lift up my index finger. I'm leaving these 3 down and I'm moving it to the 2nd string. Then I'm going to leave the other 3 down and do the same thing with my middle, then my ring finger, and then my pinky. I'm just going to walk up the guitar neck doing this. Index to the 3rd string, middle to the 3rd string, ring, and then pinky. You see how slow I'm going. This is not an exercise that we're ever doing for speed. This is not an exercise that we're ever trying to play quickly. This is an exercise that's all about connecting our brain to our fingers. We're just still crawling. Now we're to the 6th string, and then I'm going to go back. I'm going to lead with my index finger again, but you could lead with your pinky. And we're just crawling back down the guitar. It's why we call it the spider. Now the reason this works so well for connecting our brain to our fingers is all of our fingers have a job to do. Our brain's telling 3 of our fingers to stay put, which is pretty easy for them to do, especially once we've practiced this a little bit, and only 1 finger to move. But because we're connecting with each finger individually, our brain is making those connections with each finger instead of seeing our hand as one giant unit. This is so helpful as an exercise. I can't recommend it enough. If you're really struggling with flying fingers or getting your hand to cooperate, I would say do this 5 times when you start your practice session and 5 times when you finish. Up and back would be 1. If you're feeling pretty comfortable, but you think you could use a tune-up, I would say to do it 3 times at the start of the end of your practice session. And I would keep this exercise with you at least 3 times when you pick up the guitar for the foreseeable future. I'm talking like I've been playing for, if I do the math, wow, 22 years, and I still do it. So I'm telling you, I haven't outgrown it yet, but I will let you know if and when I do. Now that we can change between chords, we want to add the strumming patterns in while we're changing the chords. So we're going to start with a change from E minor to G. It's one of our anchor fingers, but we would want to apply this to all of the chord changes that we went over in the anchor fingers and the targeting fingers example. Our first strum pattern is just going to be downs on the numbers. It's really simple, but it's going to give us less time to change each chord because we only have after beat 4. Again, I'm going to start on E minor and I'm going to go to G. Again, we're going to listen for 4 clicks. We're going to count for the 4 clicks, and then we're going to come in on the strum pattern. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 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 2 and 3 and 4 and. We want to practice that really slowly. We may need to do it without the metronome first. We may need to do it at 60 beats per minute. Again, if we're struggling with those eighth notes, feeling them evenly, we do it at 120 so that we're hearing the click every time our arm is going up or down. Now, our next strum pattern is just going to be all eighth notes. Again, these are really basic. We're just trying to get comfortable doing them. So we're going to do all eighth notes on an E minor, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we're going up to a G, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, so let's try to do this with the metronome here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now again, this sounds a little mechanical and a little robotic. We're not yet to where it feels really musical, but we're right about to get there. I'm just reminding you one more time, slow down, use the metronome, get these under your fingers to where you're feeling confident. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Now let's use an actual strum pattern. We're gonna go down on 1, we're gonna miss the and after that, we're gonna go down up on 2 and. We're going to go down on beat 3, missing the next strum, and then down up on 4 and. The strum pattern, to remind you, just on an E minor, is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then we would change and go to our next chord. Again, listen for 4, count for 4, and then we're in. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Again, just reminding you, take your time, slow down. Make sure you're doing these in at least 2-minute chunks over and over again until we can get them comfortable. Some of you will go very quickly, and that's okay. You might have an affinity for strumming, or your fingers change well, or you've been playing for a little while and this is a tune-up for you. Others of you who are just getting started might have a big roadblock with the metronome, and that's okay. Remember, we are here to help you. Please reach out if you're confused, if you're stuck, if you need help. We are here to get you past that plateau. We've got one final thing to go over before we learn the form, the structure, and where each strumming pattern and idea goes for Heart of Gold. We're almost there. So far, every time we've changed a chord, it's been on beat 1. But we can actually have 2 chords more quickly than that. We can actually have a chord on beat 1 and then again on beat 3, or anywhere in the measure for that matter. So what we want to practice right now is changing chords between beat 1 and beat 3. We're going to use our E minor to G because that's what we were using before. And we're going to use our strum pattern that we were using at the end. Down on 1, down up on 2, down on 3, but we'll be at a new chord, and then down up on 4. That would be like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now we're just changing chords a little bit more quickly than we were doing before. They're happening on beats 1 and 3, not only on beat 1. So we're going to do this again together with a metronome. This would be a great thing to go through with each individual chord set, making sure that you feel really, really comfortable changing between each one. Listen for 4, count for 4, and then we're in. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now, if that's a little tricky for you, that's okay. It's going to take a little bit to get together. And once we're just working on these 2 chords back to back, we're going to need to put more together when we dive into learning the actual song. So this stuff, everything up through now, module 1, 2, and 3 is foundational to being able to play this song. When we get into the song, we're going to move pretty quickly. We're going to learn a few parts of the song, how they fit together, all these things. But this is what is foundational, making sure that we can count so I can teach you the exact strum pattern for the song, making sure that we know when to change the chord. So if I say, hey, we're changing the chord here on beat 3, we know when to move to the new chord, making sure that we know these 4 chords in particular because they're the ones we're going to be using for Heart of Gold. Now, spoiler alert, a lot of the strum patterns I've taught you are the strum patterns we're going to use for the actual song. So what you're practicing right now may seem a little mundane and it may be a little tedious as you're repeating it, but I promise you, I'm not going to come at you with a bunch of totally from left field, I can't believe this is what we're doing strum patterns. You're going to recognize a good handful of them, and even the ones that are really new, you've been set up to understand and do well playing if you've put in the time you need to build this firm foundation. We're going to start by learning the strum pattern and the chord progression for the verse. It uses all the chords we need for this song, and it happens the most often. Once we tackle this piece, we have most of the song learned. We need 4 chords. We start with E minor. Our next chord is a C. Remember, we use that anchor finger on 2nd fret of the 4th string as we're changing to the C. Then we go to a D. This one is a target finger, and I'm targeting my index finger on 2nd fret of the 3rd string. I go to G, using my ring finger on 3rd fret of the 2nd string as my anchor. And then when I'm going back to the beginning, G to E minor, using my index finger 2nd fret of the 5th string as my target. Now we're going to use the first strum pattern we learned, and we are doing 2 chords in a measure. That means we're going to have a chord on beat 1 and a chord again on beat 3. So the first way that we're going to want to practice this is we're going to want to start with our E minor, and we're going to want to strum on beat 1. C is going to be on beat 3, D on the next one, and G on the 3. That would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We would just go back to the beginning and repeat that over and over again. Now, we want to practice that with a metronome, probably starting at about 60 beats per minute, making sure we can play these chords comfortably. Once we're feeling pretty good with that, it's time to dive into the strum pattern. And we're using the first strum pattern we learned. We're going to strum down on beat 1, nothing on the and after 1, and then down up on 2 and. We're going to strum down on 3, nothing on the and after, and then down up on 4 and. But remember, the chord changes on beat 3. It'll sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now this is the part we want to get really comfortable with. Start at 60 beats per minute and strum through it. If that's too fast, remember we double it to 120. We can just dial it back and it'll be clicking each 8th note instead of us counting the 8th note in between the clicks. Now, there are 2 important things as we go to practice this I want to make sure that we understand. The first is Neil Young is a phenomenal guitar player. He's been playing forever. He's got a great sense of time and groove. And so when he's playing this song, whether you're watching a live version or the record or what have you, he's not going to strum everything exactly the same. The strumming pattern that we're using, we're trying to capture the soul of what he's playing, the groove of what he's playing, and distill it down into something that we can target. When we're learning a song, we always want to know what we've decided is right and what we've decided is wrong. The truth is, it's really about what sounds good and what feels good. And so this strum pattern is my distillation of what I hear Neil playing. What is the strum pattern that is going to make this song sound recognizable? That's going to make it easily playable, comfortable, and again, if you bust this out around the campfire, everybody knows that's Heart of Gold. And this is the strum pattern that I've come up with. People are going to play it slightly differently. Neil's going to play it different each time he plays it. And that's an important thing to remember. Staying with the metronome or staying with the groove, keeping that steady beat is the most important part. Playing the exact strum pattern I'm setting out is not quite as important. I mean, if you're at about 85% right with the strum pattern, you're doing fantastic. Okay, second point. When we're changing chords, on the last up strum we're doing, we're probably not going to have the cleanest chord. We're going to hit some open strings and we're going to have some muted notes. Let me show you what I mean. When we play slow, it doesn't happen as much. But as I speed up, you see I have to lift up my fingers as I'm doing that up strum to make it to the chord on time. Remember, staying in that groove is the most important part. And that's okay to get those open notes. That's really the sound of the guitar. It's so much more important that our right hand is in our groove than our left hand is making smooth and perfect changes. I say that so you don't get discouraged as you speed up and you start to get a little bit of that open string sound and the muted notes. Professional guitar players, your favorite guitar heroes on recordings have that happening. And if you listen closely as they're changing chords, you will start to hear it. So I just want that to be an encouragement for you. Make sure that you're practicing this, again, slowly with the metronome, making sure we're really confident that we can play this well. It's time to tackle the whole intro, starting with the signature lick of the song. So we're gonna start playing it without the mutes that Neil Young does at the beginning. So he's got those mutes happening. But for us, in the beginning, we're gonna start still doing our down up strums. And then we'll add in the mutes once we feel confident with that. So let's talk strumming pattern. We're gonna strum one full measure of the E minor chord. We're strumming down on one, nothing on the and after. Then for 2 and, 3 and, 4 and, we're going down and up. That would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Our second measure, we're going to start with a D chord. Now remember, going from an E to a D, we're using our index finger as our target note, and then filling in the rest of the chord. We're going to play down on beat 1, nothing on the and after, down on beat 2. And the and after beat 2, we're switching back to an E minor chord for an up strum, and that finishes out our measure. It would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we're going to want to practice those measures separately. The first one's probably going to be pretty easy. The second one a little bit more difficult because of that fast change in the chords there. So we want to make sure we slow this down, we make sure that we get it comfortable, practice it out of time first, making sure we can get the count. 1 and 2 and 3 and then bringing it to a metronome, making sure that we're really steady. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and just looping that over and over again for about 2 minutes and then slowly speeding up the metronome. Then we'll play those 2 measures together. Sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3, and 4, and. Again, we're going to want to play that slowly with the metronome over and over again until we feel really confident with it. I already told you that the verse progression is what we play under the harmonica solo. This signature lick that we just learned is what starts the song. So let's talk about playing the full intro. We play this signature lick that we just learned 2 times. We follow that with 3 cycles of the verse progression. That's the E minor, C, D, and then G, while the harmonica solo is happening. Then we play the signature lick 1 more time before we get to the top of the verse. So I'm going to play that for you nice and slowly so that you can hear what that sounds like. And once we're feeling comfortable with that signature lick, we'd want to start adding in this full pattern, this full intro, including the harmonica solo part. So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we've got 2 more things to work on in the intro. The first is that muting that I talked to you about. Now that distinctive sound that Neil is getting is called palm muting. Now, instead of going down and up, we're actually going to do all downs, but only on the measure where we're doing the palm muting, and that's that full measure of E minor at the very beginning of the signature lick. Now, in order to do a palm mute, we're going to take the side of our palm here, and we're resting it on the strings really close to the bridge. You see, I'm not like in the middle. There's no strings behind my palm. I want to be really far back. And the further back I am, the less it's going to mute it. If I come further up, it's really dead sounding. And if I go further back, I get a little bit more ring. So again, I really want to be far back on that bridge. You see my wrist is straight. I'm holding my pick the same way I usually would. And I'm just kind of resting my palm on those strings. And what it's going to do is it's going to keep them from, instead of vibrating freely, it's going to deaden them just a little bit and give us that kind of bassy, muted sound we're looking for. And so all we're doing on this first measure is we're palm muting after we do that first drum. That's on that 2 and 3 and 4 and. So here's that whole signature lick with the palm muting, again, only on the first measure. And remember, for just that measure, we're doing all down strums to get this sound. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Make sure if this is new for you, you're practicing it very slowly. As we speed it up, it'll start to sound more natural, but we need to do it slowly in the beginning. Remember, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Now, we're gonna learn one last piece, which is that just ending bit that he does at the end of the signature lick on the acoustic guitar. So, here we go. That lick, we're gonna learn it first, then we're gonna put it in its spot. We're doing a hammer-on from open 5th string to 2nd fret on the 5th string. Now a hammer-on, if you haven't done it before, is where you pluck and then you just use your left hand finger to play the note. And we're not trying to be strong when we do this, we're just trying to be quick. The quicker and more confidently we set down our finger right behind that fret, the better our note is gonna sound. So again, that hammer-on from open 5th string to 2nd fret on the 5th string. We play open 4th and then 2nd fret on the 4th. Now, my right hand is plucking up, down on the open 4th string, and up on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. This is happening on the and of 3, 4, and the and of 4 at the end of the signature lick. I'm going to play it for you, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, I want you to notice that the hammer-on happens on the and after 3, both notes. And, 4, and. So that hammer-on is happening pretty quickly, and, 4, and, to give us time to pluck that open 4th string on 4 and the 2nd fret on the and after 4. I would recommend when we're learning this, we want to isolate this part as much as possible. I would say put on a metronome at 60 beats per minute and just play the and, 4, and, making sure we're using the right fingers in our left hand, index finger for the hammer-on 5th fret, and then middle finger for the 2nd fret on 4th string when we get there. We're using the right plucking, up, down, up. And the reason it's up, down, up, remember, down on numbers, up on ands. And so if it's and, 4, and, it would be up, down, up for the plucking. That's how we're getting that. And so I would just practice that where I'm 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I'm just repeating that lick over and over again. Then I would do it in the context of the measure repeating it over again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Again, nice and slowly until I'm feeling really confident with it. And only then would I put it in the context of the full lick. And there you have it. That is our full intro for Heart of Gold. Let's talk about playing the full verse. We've learned our main verse progression, which is this E minor, C, D, and G. Our strum being 1, 2, and 3, 4, and changing chords on 1 and 3. Now we play that pattern 3 times, and then the verse has a different ending. To play the ending of the verse, we're going to start with an E minor chord, and we're going to play a full measure of all the 8th notes, which would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then we do the same thing on a G chord. Sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, this is the part that's a little bit trickier. We're going to go to a C chord after the G, and we're going to strum down on 1, up on the and after 1. We're going to strum up on the and after 2, and then down on beat 4. Sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. A little bit faster so you can feel the groove and kind of hear where that would be in the song. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then we're going to strum down, up, down, still on the C on beats 1 and 2, and then up on a G chord to end it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm going to play just the second half, that C chord to the G chord, so you can get a feel for it, and then I'll put it all together. Here we go, second half. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now let's put the whole ending of the verse together. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We would actually play that whole thing 2 times, at the end of each verse. So we would play our initial verse progression, the E minor, C, D, and G, 3 times in a row, and the ending part we just learned 2 times, and that would make a whole verse. So I'm going to go ahead and play a whole verse, so again, you get the feel for it and how it sounds. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now just a couple small notes. When I'm doing that measure where we have those hits, where I'm playing 1 and, the and after 2 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. To get that muted sound that I'm doing there sometimes, I'm playing those first 3 strums, 1 and 2 and then I'm relaxing my left hand and just kind of setting my fingers to mute the strings. You could also use the palm of your right hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? I'm just kind of setting it there. I do it sometimes, I don't do it others. I can hear Neil Young doing it sometimes when he plays it, not all the time. I think it gives it some flavor and some groove, but it's not a must-have every time you're playing it. But it is a fun thing to practice if you're feeling pretty confident with that strum pattern in the chords. If you're struggling to count that, I wouldn't worry about the mute. The first thing is that we can get the groove, then we can add the bells and whistles. One more fun thought for the ending of this section is on that last measure where we play 1 and 2, and then the and after 2 on that G chord, instead of strumming a C, there's that pedal steel guitar, slide guitar that's happening on the recording. It kind of walks down a scale, and I think a lot of times it's fun to walk down 3 notes from this 3rd fret on the 5th string, 2nd fret on the 5th string, open 5th string, and then play our G chord. And that would be on 1 and 2 and would be the G chord. And so I'm just plucking down, and then an up strum, right? And so that's a fun way to do it, doing just the second half with that picking pattern in there. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. One time, the whole ending with that walk down in there instead of just strumming the C chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now remember, that's just a little spice, a little something to give it extra flavor. If you're struggling to get the C chord to the G chord, I wouldn't start doing the walk down yet. That's something fun to add as you're feeling more and more confident playing this song. We've got one more piece of the song we need to learn before we can put it all together and play the whole thing, and that is the very end, after the last harmonica solo. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a full measure of an E minor chord, all 8th notes. Then we're going to play D on beat 1 of the next bar for 1 and 2, down, up, down, and then on the and, we're going to play E minor, and then 3 and 4 and is also E minor. It's going to sound like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I hope you notice that sounds a little bit like the signature lick at the beginning. It doesn't have as much character and not as much fun happening on the guitar. We're just playing steady eighth notes, but we are still changing on that and after 2 from the D back to the E minor, and it's going to give it a similar flavor. There is a lyric and a vocal happening on this, so I think Neil was trying to get out of the way of that, keep that same heart, that same groove, but just play it in a little bit less of a flashy and signature way. We're going to play that pattern 3 times. E minor for a bar, D on 1 and 2, and then the and back to the E minor, full eighth notes all the way through. We do that 3 times. Then we're going to play a full measure of E minor and a full measure of G, both with full eighth notes. Let's see what that sounds like. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now the very ending of the song, we're going to play a full measure of C on eighth notes, and then we're going to do our down, up, down, or 1 and 2 on C, and end on an up strum on G, and that's the end of the song, which sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's it. That's the ending to the song. So I'm going to play this ending or outro so that you can get the feel for how it goes, and then we're going to put the whole song together. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now again, on that very last measure, instead of the down, up, down on C to the G, we could do our walk down. Just depending on how you want to end the song. So I've made what I would consider a chord over lyric sheet, but I did put some more detail on it. The way that I've been teaching you strumming to count 1 and 2 and going down on numbers, up on ands, I have written that for the sections that don't have a lyric so that we can see how long we're playing everything. If you follow along with me, at the top of the lead sheet or the chord over lyrics chart, you see the first thing we have is the intro, or that signature lick. If you look off to the right, there's a ×2, reminding you we play that 2 times. The next, it says harmonica intro. That's to let you know, as you're listening to the recording or playing along with it, or even just remembering it in your mind's ear, that that's where the harmonica comes in. And so that's where we change our strumming pattern, we change our chord progression, and again, we play that 3 times. Coming back to the intro, which is again our signature lick. Now, I want you to notice for the intro, I did write it down, down, up, down, up, down, up, even though we talked about doing mutes all down. I do want us to get in the habit of strumming down on numbers, up on ands, because it's such a useful habit. If we can do that, and we can ingrain that in our right hand, we'll be able to listen to and strum along with almost any song. That said, I just wanted to remind you that is where we can do the all down strums for that 1 measure of E minor, using that palm muting technique to get that distinctive sound. The next thing that happens is we're into verse 1. You'll see we have 3 cycles of the E minor, C, D, and G. That's over the I want to live, I want to give, I've been a miner for a heart of gold, it's these expressions I never give. Then we move on to what I called the ending of the verse. You'll see it's that E minor, that G, and then the C, and then the G. But I want to remind you here, when we're looking at a chord over lyric sheet, it's not comprehensive. It's meant to be a reminder. And so I say that because we would look at this and our brain would tend to think, well, each one of those chords lasts the same amount of time, but that's not true. Remember that C chord. That's where we play the C chord for a full measure, and then again on beat 1 and 2. Remember, we can do our walk down or strum the C major chord there for the 1 and 2. I remind you of that to let you know that this is intended to be a reminder. It doesn't have all of the information you need to play the song. The only place you can get all the information you need is by listening to the record, or again, going through it slowly and breaking it down like we're doing together right now. We do that twice. That's that keeps me searching for a heart of gold and I'm getting old. Keep me searching for a heart of gold and I'm getting old. Now you'll see the next thing we have is a harmonica solo, and it just says harmonica solo times 3. I didn't write out the strum pattern and the chords again because we do have them at the top of the sheet where it says harmonica intro. It's exactly the same. Intro times 1, again, that's the same at the top of the page, so I didn't write it out again. That brings us to the second page and the second verse. The second verse is just like the first verse. We play the verse chord progression, the E minor, C, D, and G, changing on beats 1 and 3 with our strum pattern 3 times. I've been to Hollywood, I've been to Redwood, I've crossed the ocean for a heart of gold. I've been in my mind, it's such a fine line. Then we switch to what I called the ending of the verse, and that's that keeps me searching for a heart of gold and I'm getting old, that keeps me searching for a heart of gold and I'm getting old. And again, remember, on that C chord, we play the full bar and then 1 and 2 and we come to the G on that up strum on the and of 2, and we can switch it out for that walk down on that C chord at the top of that measure. We have another harmonica solo and we play that 3 times. Again, that's our verse progression or the harmonica solo progression. It's at the top of the sheet. And then we go to the ending. If you remember the ending, we're playing the straight eighth notes. It does remind us of that signature lick, but it's not exactly the same. We do the E minor to D, back to the E minor 3 times, and then we finish it out by going E minor for a full bar, G for a full bar. We do a full bar of C, and then the 1 and 2 on the C, and the and is on the G. We're strumming up there. Now I'm walking you through this, just talking you through it so you can see what's going on. If I started talking about that ending and you thought, I don't know what he's talking about, there's the video on just the ending. Go back and make sure that you understand the structure of the ending. Or if you're confused about how the verse is laid out, go to the video about the verse in particular. We've got the one that teaches you the first strumming pattern, but the one that puts it all together after the intro video. Go ahead and go back to that. Refresh yourself. Make sure you understand each piece on its own, and then come back here and make sure you understand how each piece fits into the whole. Next up, we are going to play this. I'm going to play it at the full tempo, which is about 85 beats per minute. I'm going to play the whole tune, and then I'm going to play it at about 60 beats per minute so that it's slowed down. And if you're having trouble at the faster speed, you can play it a little bit more slowly along with me. Now I'm going to play the whole song so that you can play along with me, and I'm playing it at about the record tempo, or 85 beats per minute. I'm going to play it with the mutes and maybe a little bit of flair, just so you can hear how I'm playing it, how I'm doing it, and as we're playing together, you can start to match that groove. I'm going to try to do that, then play it super straight. That said, I'm not going to try to add a lot of bells and whistles. I'm not going to try to do any extra licks or anything like that. I just want to play the song in a way that's recognizable and that we could easily sing along to with our friends. I've got my chord over lyric sheet sitting right here to my left. So if I'm glancing off that way, it's just because I'm trying to make sure that I'm on track. Now, I'm going to count myself in, and then I'm probably going to stop counting out loud so that I'm not distracting you when you're playing. But I will say I would like you, as you're playing this, to be counting out loud, to practice doing that. Now, you don't need to do it every time and you don't need to do it forever, but again, making sure that you can. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I want you to see I didn't play it exactly right. There were a couple times where maybe I didn't hit a strum that I intended to, or I talked about being important when we were playing the song. Maybe I made a mistake and my chord change wasn't as clean as it could be, but I want you to see the song is recognizable, and that's what we're shooting for. Last thought I want to leave you with is the first time I did do the strums on the C, second time I did the walk down, just so you could hear how they were different. Again, do the strums first, add the walk down if necessary, and the song will be just as cool without that little lick at the end of the signature part of the song. People will still recognize it. So make sure you start getting the groove, and then we add in the extra little parts. We're gonna play the full song again, but this time at only 60 beats per minute. This will give you the opportunity to play it a little bit more slowly if you were struggling to keep up at 85. I know that I'm always saying, hey, slow down, so I want to give us an opportunity to do that together. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... right, again, I want you to see I'm shooting for 85% accuracy. I was going maybe a little faster than the metronome because I'm not used to playing it slow. A couple times I was a little slow. That's okay. I didn't get off from it. I was able to notice and I was able to get back on. That's the most important skill to build. Also, if you notice, I'm kind of mouthing the words as I'm doing it. It's a lot easier to sing the song with Neil Young or hear the harmonica solo in your mind to keep the place where you are than it is to count, okay, I'm doing this for the second time, okay, I'm doing this for the third time. We don't tend to repeat things in this song more than, let's say, 3 times. So that's not that tricky. But sometimes you'll be playing things 8 or 16 times over and over again in the same song. And so following the vocal, following the lyric is a much easier way to keep our place in the song. All right, there you have it. Now you're playing Neil Young's Heart of Gold. Now, let's talk about the important part. How do we take what we learned learning Heart of Gold and apply this to other songs? The first thing that we want to do is we want to remember our down-up strumming, down on numbers, up on ands. Whenever we're trying to count a song, we want to find that pulse. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, some songs aren't in 4. I said, somewhere between 85 and 95% of songs. So there's songs that are in different meters. Money by Pink Floyd famously is in 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But that is by far the exception. Almost everything you're going to find is counted in 4. And if it's not in 4, it's typically in 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But for our purposes, we really want to find a way to count songs in 4. So when we're listening to a song, that's the first thing we're going to do. I'm going to take Sweet Home Alabama as an example, and I'm going to play it as if we were listening to it. So imagine we're putting on the record, and nicely enough, they count us in. They say 1, 2, 3. Start. Now our goal would be to count along with that. So as I'm listening, I would start to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I'm counting along. I'm going to look up a chord over lyric sheet. I'm probably going to go to Ultimate Guitar or something like that. I'm just going to Google, Sweet Home Alabama chords, and I'll find out that I'm playing a D, a C, and a G. Now, I tend to play these as a D sus, so pinky 3rd fret of the 1st string, ring finger 3rd fret of the 2nd string, index finger 2nd fret of the 3rd string. I leave these 2 fingers, my ring and pinky, parked. Just move my middle finger to play 3rd fret on the 5th string for what I'm going to call a C sus. And then finally a G5 chord, which is just moving my middle finger to 3rd fret of the 6th string. So now I'm going to try to line up where these chords change. Now, as I'm counting and listening, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm noticing that, hey, I know I've got D, I've got a C, I've got a G, and I'm hearing, the D, 2, 3 is a C chord, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 is the G chord. And I'll see that in the lyrics, right? As they're singing, big wheels keep on turning. Go to the D. Carry me home. And I'll see those chords. And I'll see those chords over those lyrics. So that's going to help me line it up as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to the song, and my goal is to come up with a strum pattern that's going to work well for that particular song. Now, we don't want to get hung up on the strumming pattern. There's not one pattern, there's not something that's perfect. Leonard Skinner, for example, has like 3 guitar players in there. There's so much happening. We're not going to be able to capture it all, but we want to capture the spirit. So for me, as I'm listening to those chord changes, I'm hearing 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So I'm hearing a 1 and 2, 3, and 4, which is going to be 1 and 2, and then I would miss after, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now I'm not saying that is the only strum pattern you can play. I'm saying that's the strum pattern that I'm hearing. Now the important thing, I would get out a sheet of paper and I would write out, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I would put my chord changes, D, and then C, and then G there, and then I would figure out, okay, well, I've got 1 and 2 and on my D chord. How many of those am I strumming? Which ones am I not strumming? Right, if you've been practicing this eighth note game, if you've been learning these strumming patterns, you should be able to look at that and go, okay, I'm gonna say 1, 2 and maybe that's what you're hearing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Again, there's not a right and a wrong. I'm hearing it one way, you might hear it another. The important part is that we're changing the chords where they're supposed to change, and we're committing to what we see as the strum pattern so we can really build the groove. Let's take another example. Let's use Wagon Wheel. It's an Old Crow Medicine Show song, and Darius Rucker did a version of it, right? I'm using capo on the 2nd fret. The chords are going to be G, D, E minor, and then C. And then the second time we go G, D, C twice. And we just repeat that over and over again. Both Sweet Home Alabama and this Old Crow Medicine Show song, they have the same chord progression the whole song, which is why I'm picking them to show you, to illustrate this point. And so if we're listening to them play that song, so we hear them doing just a whole bunch of strums in the right hand. All sorts of stuff is going on, and there's all sorts of little nuance and things that are happening. But what we want to do is we want to, again, figure out the count. It's our first thing. And then once we figure out the count, we want to figure out what strum pattern are we shooting for. So again, I'm going to play it and we're just going to start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Each chord lasts one measure, except for that C at the end when we skip the E minor, right? G, D, E minor, C, G, D, E, or G, D, C, C twice. Each one of those is one full measure. And what I'm hearing, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 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 1. So I mean 1, 2, 3, and 4, and, right? That's the base of the groove. And so that's what I really want to pull out. And again, I might write it down, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And what am I hearing? Okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4 and what does that mean? Down, 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 up, down, up. So I can count that and I can feel it. Now, in the beginning, this isn't going to be necessarily super easy. You're not going to hit play on a song and go like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I think it's like 1 and 2, 3. No, it's going to take a little bit. It's going to be something where you need to listen to the song and you need to make sure you can really count. And Sweet Home Alabama is a great one because they count you in. They say 1, 2, 3. Bump, bump, ba-dum. I mean, we're right in and we can count along. He sets the tempo. He's like the metronome at the beginning. When you're listening to rock songs or anything that has drums, usually you're going to hear the snare drum hit and it's going to be on 2 and 4. So 1, snare, 3, snare. That can also help you line up. The biggest thing is that we're counting first. Can I count along with the song? Once I do that, I want to write out my 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and figure out where my chord changes happen. Again, a chord over lyric chart is going to be really helpful in doing that. And then once we do that, we're going to sit down and go, okay, where do I feel like this strumming pattern is? And then we just learn the strum pattern that we've created listening to the song. And we're not really creating it out of thin air, but we're listening for the groove of the song. We're pulling out the parts that we feel are making that groove. And then we are turning it into a strum pattern. When in doubt, just write out the strum pattern and try it. And then get good enough at the strum pattern and then try to play it along with the song. And if you do that and you go, you know, I actually think the strum pattern isn't quite right, I want to change it. You've still learned so much and built so much muscle memory and control and groove in just learning a strumming pattern that you came up with to get to the point that you can play it along with the song, even if you decide once you get there that it's not quite the fit and you make some adjustments. So I want that to be my encouragement to you.
grab some songs that have relatively simple chords, things like Knockin' on Heaven's Door or All Summer Long or something like Olivia by John Mayer, songs that have, a chord progression that repeats. So it's really quick and easy to learn and has maybe less parts than Heart of Gold does. That way we've got an opportunity to listen to the song, learn the counting, come up with that strum pattern, and we can go through that process multiple times over the next few weeks. Let's talk about how to use your practice time. I always say adult beginners, adults getting back into it, adult guitar players can practice 4 times a week for 20 minutes each and see real big improvement in their guitar playing. So if I were just starting out, what would that 20 minutes look like? So I would sit down and I would need 5 things: my guitar, any practice materials I have, like the videos or play-alongs that you're working with. I would have a metronome, an egg timer, and then somewhere to write down what I'm working on. I would take the first of my 20 minutes and I would write down what I'm planning to do that day. And I'm gonna leave a minute for flex. It's gonna take me a second to go in between everything. So that leaves me 9 2-minute blocks that I can fill with practice. So again, if I am a brand new guitar player, I'm a beginner, I'm gonna spend 2 minutes doing a grab and release on my E minor chord. I'm gonna put the metronome on 60 beats per minute for my second block. I'm just gonna count eighth notes along with it. For my third block, I'm gonna do downs while I'm counting the eighth notes at 60 beats per minute. For my fourth block, I'm gonna do the down ups while I'm counting along with the metronome at 60 beats per minute. It's my first 4 blocks, I've got 5 left. Now, if I'm struggling with the metronome, I'm probably gonna either double the speed of it and go to 120 and practice doing it that way, or even speed it up double and then kind of back it off to 100 or 80, and so I can really dig in and pay attention to that metronome. But let's say I feel really confident with the metronome, I might go on and at 60 beats per minute, do one of the first few strum patterns. And so let's say, either speeding up to slow it down, right, going to the 120 and then dialing it back would be my 5th and 6th, or a new strum pattern. Then I would have 3 blocks left, and I would use those to learn my new chord. So I would do a grab and release on the C, on the G, on the D, each one for 2 minutes. And so that would be my first practice session. And my second practice session might look really similar. Now, if I feel pretty good with my grab and releases and I'm remembering my chords when I get back to the guitar, I'm gonna take those blocks, and instead of doing grab and release, I'm gonna start changing between the chords using my anchor fingers between, say, E minor and C. And again, just really slowly practicing that change, maybe out of time at the beginning. I don't even have a metronome on because I know I have to go so slow. And then maybe the next day or the next day, I'm gonna be able to add the metronome in. But so what I'm doing is I'm only doing a little piece at a time. I need to remember that I think about it in terms of vertical time and linear time. So vertical time is the time we spend in one sitting, and that's the 20-minute block. Linear time is how many days we play guitar. If you play guitar 20 minutes every day for 3 years, I promise you, you will make progress. Now, it's typically hard for a lot of people not to get frustrated and not to feel like, man, there's so much more I want to learn. It's really difficult. But when we have the tools that we need, we're able to make that progress, we're able to stay excited, we're able to not stop, and that's how you get good at guitar. The people who end up getting there are the people who just don't quit. And so we want to think in terms of that linear time. The vertical time, we just want to commit to, okay, what do I need to work on today? What's the one thing I need to do, the 2 things I need to do, the 3 things I need to do for my 9 blocks to get better. And we just want to get that little bit better, that little bit better. And so in a course like this, we present a ton of information. There's so much going on with Heart of Gold. Now, some of you guys have been playing for a while. This is a bit of a refresher. I'm teaching you some new practice concepts, and you're going to fly through it. You don't even need to learn these chords. We're starting and learning this verse strum pattern, and you feel great. Some of you just picked up a guitar and thought, hey, this will be a cool way to learn. And if that's the case for you, you're going to need to do these grab and release exercises, and that might take up a chunk of your practice time for the first week, in which case things are going to be a little slower, but we just need to commit. We need to say, where am I going to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, not where am I going to be tomorrow. We're practicing today so that next week we're going to be really good at the thing we're practicing today. And so again, the reason that I say use an egg timer is when we start to practice, 20 seconds feels a lot like 2 minutes. And so what we want to do is have that timer going so we really see how long we're playing something. So we can really build up that muscle memory, our mind's ear and our mind's eye, and really learn where our fingers need to go when we need to be playing something, what it feels like to play it, and what it sounds like to listen to ourselves play the thing that we're working on. I promise you, if you commit to doing this, if you're gonna play guitar in this way, if you're gonna put on the metronome, you're gonna set the egg timer, you're gonna track and say, hey, today I did it at 60 beats per minute. I did it again at 68 beats per minute. So tomorrow I'm gonna try to start it at 68 beats per minute because it felt pretty comfortable. That's really where we wanna be. Now, I do recommend a couple ideas is I would say using a warm-up like the spider I taught you for 2 minutes is great if you have time in your practice routine. And if you notice you have fingers flying, I would say dedicate some time to that one. If you're struggling with the metronome, make sure you put extra time where you're struggling. We don't want to be doing the things we feel great about. We want to be doing the things that are difficult. It's always a good idea to save maybe your last 2-minute block, especially as you get better, to just play, to have fun, to really enjoy playing. And so maybe you play through what is easy or the parts of the song that you know or the songs that you do know. Make sure you leave time for yourself to actually play guitar and have fun. Also, let's say you tell me you can practice more. I would say doing 2 20-minute blocks or 3 20-minute blocks is better than doing a 40 or a 60-minute block. And instead of doing it completely differently, I would actually practice the same things when you sit down and maybe do a 20-minute block in the morning and a 20 in the evening. You know, maybe you have your guitar and you can bust it out for lunch at work and then you would get a third one in. And we're doing the same thing that we're working on that whole day. We're going back and doing the same exercises, but we might speed up the metronome. Or we might add in something that makes it a little bit more difficult the second time and the third time so that we're seeing ourselves progress as we're getting better at this. Always keep in mind it's not about strength, it's not about speed, it's not about endurance, it's about connecting our brain to our fingers. So if we're not making the sound we want, let's check in and see where am I not hearing what I need to play or what I want to play, or where do I not know where I'm supposed to go with my fingers. Now you might know what a C chord looks like or feels like, but if you're coming to a C chord from an E minor chord and you've never done that before, you might not be landing on it the way you want to, and we might need to really dig in and figure out, okay, how many strings over is this finger going? How many frets up is this finger going? And really look at what we're doing. Slow down, dig into it. If we have a clear mental picture of what it sounds like to play what we want, and a clear mental picture of what it looks and feels like, we are going to play it. That I promise you.
Now that you've worked your way through Heart of Gold, if you want to learn how I take my students from this to playing Hendrix and Clapton in only 6 songs, this video breaks down my entire process.